Good evening and welcome to Massey United Insurance's Line and Line. And on tonight's program, we take a look at the Regional Professional Cricket League. How professional is it really? The West Indies are at the World Cup, but do they have any chance of winning it? And of course, the CPL is coming back to the Caribbean pretty soon. All that and more on tonight's Massey United Insurance's Line and Line.
Across the Caribbean, more people are placing their trust in Massey United Insurance for the protection of the things that are important to them, their homes, businesses, and their prized possessions. That's because Massey United Insurance offers excellent general insurance coverage to help you manage whatever life sends your way. Our cadre of well-reputed agencies and trained insurance professionals are always ready to provide you with sound advice and prompt service. Choose the security and sound strength that is Massey United Insurance.
And welcome back to Massey United Insurance's Line and Line, and to all our viewers on Digicel Sportsmax and Scene TV in North America. We have with us tonight Hendy Wallace. He's in two capacities. He's chairman of the Barbados Cricket Selectors, but he's also a cricket analyst and commentator. Hendy, the Regional Professional Cricket League has started in the Caribbean, resumed after the break for Christmas, and they won the Nagico Super 50. How professional is this Regional Professional Cricket League, as they call it, because the performances are certainly not anything to shout about?
Yeah, performances are not what you would have wished for. I think is really getting the respective territories into the mindset of the professional setup, and I think they're getting somewhere near to where they want to be in terms of the preparation of the majority of the teams and the whole mindset of the players. So it's going to take some time, and I personally believe that this first year is they're probably going to look at areas that they can improve, and there'll be some tweaking done, no doubt. And I think that you will see that year two will be probably a decent gauge as to where we really are in terms of the professional structure.
There's been a lot of discussion about the draft, and of course as it relates to the Leeward Islands Hurricanes, that's the current team we're talking about. We saw them here in Barbados. The performance was absolutely a debacle, and clearly there was a need, or there is a need, for the Leeward Islands to have taken some players in the draft. They certainly probably could use 3 or 4 batsmen.
And that seemed like the obvious thing, Andrew, and even from way back in the draft. And I think that Ridley Jacobs, the coach, was asked a question at the end of the draft about the possibility of utilizing the services of more experienced players in the region. And his answer at the time was something along the lines that they felt the players they had were good enough, and they really just needed more cricket and more in-depth preparation. Now, that certainly has not been the case, and the results would not suggest that. It seems like pretty much the same of what we've seen for the last 5 or 10 years from the Leeward Islands. So a lot of work still needs to be done, and I'm not sure why they would not take advantage of those players that were available, experienced players who have done it at international level that were available in the draft. We would have thought that that's the way to go. Some people ask, well, why didn't Barbados do it? And it would be for the same reason that Ridley Jacobs gave. We felt that the players that were available to us were as good as any available in the region, and we saw it as an opportunity to really expose a lot of the good talent that we have in the Barbados setup. And everybody obviously can't play, and my selection panel, I can tell you, have had its challenges in trying to balance that and try to utilize those skilled players as much as possible on a possible rotation basis.
Well, we've had a lot of discussion in Barbados, and we don't necessarily want to focus on the Barbados team as to who should be and who should not be selected, and I certainly won't put you on the spot in that respect. But if we look at it from a regional perspective, the Guyanese have taken Raymond Reef, and it perhaps has been an inspired choice. They were looking for an all-rounder, and it has worked to their benefit, certainly.
Yeah, well, they came with a strategic plan. They identified an area of their game that needed some assistance, and they earmarked a player. And we were surprised when he got picked very first up, because he would have been one of our players of choice to fill that all-rounders role. We expected that Carlos Brathwaite would have elevated to international level, and we were sort of hinging our bets that Raymond Reef would have been a straight swap for him. But again, it gives an opportunity to more players, and we certainly think we have a lot of players that you don't know how good they are until they're given the opportunity at the first class level. They will do well at club level and what have you in practice matches and things like that, but it's really when you have to play on the first class stage to give you some indication as to what they're capable of doing to go to the next level, because that's what you want to do as well. You want to develop your players, and you want to prepare them as best as you possibly can for the international stage.
Well, certainly, you're talking about preparation for the international stage. What we saw in the past weekend of the fifth round of the tournament, we saw 3 convincing victories. And perhaps the one that was most refreshing was the victory by the Windward Islands playing at home, having scored 400 plus runs within the time frame to get the bonus batting points. And certainly for someone who once have been viewed as the minnows of regional cricket for so long, a performance by the Windward Islands would suggest that perhaps the PCL has something in it, especially for them.
Well, they've played some good cricket in the last couple of years. If you look back at all the formats, they've done quite well in the different formats in regional cricket. Well led by Darren Sammy over the years, and you think that the continuity is there. Liam Sebastian has taken over, and he seemed to have got a good response from his players as well. Shillingford has been back in the setup, and they've actually kept a nucleus of players together for a long time. A nucleus of about maybe 8 or 9 players.
Right, because it's Ken Roy, Peters,
for a long time.
Johnson.
That helps.
They've been around.
So they've got a fairly settled lineup as well, and that would obviously help. But talking about their strategy, they've obviously brought that form from the 50-over tournament when they played very aggressively at the back end of the tournament. And they've actually worked out the formula how to maximize those batting points. And not many teams have been able to get full batting points to get that 400 within the 110 overs. But they did it with time to spare in the last game. So that could be very crucial when you look at the eventual standings. Bonus points will play a part. Most teams are able to pick up the 3 bowling points that you will get in the 110 overs.
Is it really easier to pick up bowling points than it is to pick up batting points? Because it seems teams are adapting more easily to get in the bowling points.
Well, I think you look at the individuals, it seems like there are more bowlers featuring. And the one thing that's the one consistent thing throughout is the spin bowlers. So all the spin bowlers for the respective territories are doing well, maybe with the exception of the Leeward Islands, but all the other teams, the spin bowlers are doing exceptionally well for them and taking the majority of wickets. So that has worked well in the regional tournament. However, when you go on the international stage, it's not the same. The strike rate seems to be a lot higher.
Is it the challenge of the pitches? Because we have been hearing for a number of years, and the West Indies Cricket Board has introduced a pitch consulting team, etc., to go around the region looking at the whole question of pitches. But are you satisfied, having been in Trinidad and Tobago for the Nagico Super 50? You're here in Barbados at Kensington Oval, which had not seen cricket for a number of months. Are you satisfied with the type of pitches we're getting?
No, not totally. And I always felt in the last couple of years that some help was required for the groundsmen. It's good to see that they're putting things in place to try and assist the groundsmen, because we're seeing pitches that are either too far north or too far south, and pitches spinning from the first day and what have you is a bit too much. In my view, we're not striking the balance for a good cricket pitch. So that, in essence, I think has created some problems. We've seen some slow bowlers who have been flattered by the conditions that they've been offered, and has made it increasingly difficult for the batsmen whose skills are not necessarily as good as you would expect to play spin bowling. So the statistics would suggest that it's easier to pick up the bowling points than it is to pick up the batting points.
Well, if we talk about the system, we've had discussions here on this program. In fact, veteran journalist Sam Wilkins suggested to do away with the bonus points. He likes first innings, but Sam is steeped in conservatism in terms of his cricket, because he doesn't even watch T20 cricket. Your thoughts on the whole question of the introduction of the bonus system, the doing away of first innings points, etc.? I
will still be inclined to have the first innings points. Because you'll find that an incomplete match, as they call it, familiarly known as a draw, the only points available, I think there are 3 for each team, and then the bonus points. And a team can be totally outplayed for maybe 2 or 3 days if bad weather comes into it, and then there's limited time to play. I don't think it's a true reflection on the points gained in the match, or the upper hand in the actual match. So I will still be inclined to have the first innings points for the time.
Along with the bonus points?
Along with the bonus points, okay. Yes. Yeah, I like the idea of bonus points.
Interesting thoughts there from Hendy Wallace. When we come back, the Caribbean Premier League returns to Trinidad and Tobago. We'll take a look at what's going on there.
Across the Caribbean, more people are placing their trust in Massey United Insurance for the protection of the things that are important to them, their homes, businesses, and their prized possessions. That's because Massey United Insurance offers excellent general insurance coverage to help you manage whatever life sends your way. Our cadre of well-reputed agencies and trained insurance professionals are always ready to provide you with sound advice and prompt service. Choose the security and sound strength that is Massey United Insurance.
And welcome back to Massey United Insurance's Line and Length. And Hendy, the Caribbean Premier League is back, and it seems as if it's going to be another banger. The semi-finals and finals are going to be in Trinidad and Tobago. But before we get there, the draft was held earlier this week, and certainly it seems as if the 6 franchises, including the new St. Kitts franchise, they have been very deliberate in their selections.
Yeah, very precise and very strategic in the selection. And it's good to see. So a few players have been swapped around the various franchises and stuff. So you would think that would only augur well for the tournament and make it a much better tournament. And just like anything else, we expect it to go from strength to strength. So errors that were made in the last edition, you would expect those to be rectified by the respective teams.
Defending champions, the Barbados Tridents, have certainly been very, very selective. The captain, Kieran Pollard, and coach Desmond Haynes, you could see at the franchise draft that they were very, very clear as to what they were looking for. I think Barbados Tridents have got the combination they were looking for.
It seems that way. From hearing, getting the feedback from the powers that be, it would seem that they're satisfied with what they were able to acquire from the draft, and they've also they're clear in their mind what sort of composition they want for their team as well, and they've been able to retain some of their key players. Well, they've lost Shakib Al Hassan, who I thought would have been very critical in the combination, but apart from that, I think they're relatively satisfied with who they've been able to acquire.
What of the new franchise, the St. Kitts franchise? Clearly the Antigua Hawksbills didn't work out as well as expected. CPL has moved to St. Kitts. Obviously it seems to be a favourite venue for the Caribbean Premier League, and now they have their own franchise and some interesting selections on that team. It seems as if it's a pretty strong combination.
Yeah, what they would have done is picked out some of the better players as well from the Hawksbills and brought them into this new franchise as well. St. Kitts put on a good show. I think all eyes were on how they were going to actually successfully host those series of matches in such a short space of time, and I think they should be given kudos for how they were able to manage the whole situation. So I'm looking forward to the cricket going back to St. Kitts to see how the matches are going to go there. And the new franchise obviously will look to improve on the areas that the Hawksbills seem to have struggled. So you've got some key players from the Hawksbills playing for St. Kitts, and they've strengthened them as well with some international players. So I think that you'll see them putting up a much better show than what we saw from the Hawksbills.
The St. Lucia Zooks were in the same category as the Antigua Hawksbills last CPL, but the team has been somewhat strengthened. Obviously some big names have come to St. Lucia, and certainly I expect that Darren Sammy led Zooks, because with the enthusiasm of a Darren Sammy, the Zooks should certainly be a factor.
Yeah, I think overall, Andrew, I expect the tournament to be better. I expect the competition to be a lot more evenly contested. And for the St. Lucia Zooks, Peterson is now going to be available for the entire tournament. Certainly at this stage, he's certainly going to be available for the entire tournament. That in itself must be a boost for the Zooks and for the tournament, to have players like that, where they raise the profile of the tournament. And I'm sure the organizers want it to seem as if they wanted to place the same importance as they do to some of the other T20 tournaments around the world, and they don't want it to seem as if it's just journeymen looking to make up numbers or to pick up some extra cash playing these tournaments. So I get the feel that there's going to be a real purpose in this year's tournament.
You mentioned the word journeyman, and I don't want to juxtapose the names of Jack Callis and Shahid Afridi among the journeymen, but certainly these are two guys perhaps in the twilight of their careers, but looking to make an impression in yet another T20 tournament.
Twilights of their career, yes, but they're still very much up there with the very best, and they're out and out entertainers as well. Shahid Afridi is an entertainer with his style of play, and Jacques Callis has probably got to the stage where he no longer can be up there with the top players in the world, but even now you still expect a level of professionalism from Jacques Kallis, and that too, there's a place for that in the tournament. We talk about our young players benefiting from this CPL. I think that's the area where they can benefit by rubbing shoulders with these great players, these outstanding players, to see exactly how they go about their game, how they set up their game. Not so much to gain the experience on the field of play, because you expect your international stars to dominate proceedings, to be in there batting early, bowling their 4 overs. So you may find that the young, promising players in the region may just have to take a back seat on the field of play. But certainly one area I think that they can benefit from is the whole preparation, the practice sessions, dressing room mannerisms of these outstanding players.
The Amazon Warriors, the Talawas, and the Red Force, Red Steel. 3 teams that have always done well in T20 tournaments in the Caribbean, and the 3 of them once more they make up the rest of the combination of the 6 teams in the Caribbean Premier League. A quick look at those 3.
Again, you really can't separate them. I think that's the beauty about this tournament. I don't know if there's any out-and-out favorite. At this stage, you probably have to look at conditions and where you play your respective matches and what the conditions might probably play more of a part than anything else. But looking at the individuals, pound for pound, they look very evenly balanced, and I don't think you can separate them.
The finals go back to Trinidad, the land of party. We certainly enjoyed ourselves in the first CPL when the finals were played in Trinidad and Tobago. Looking forward to going back there, I'm sure. Your thoughts? What a wonderful weekend. The finals in Trinidad, semi-finals and finals.
Trinidad and Tobago, they know how to host a tournament. They know how to entertain, and they know how to party. Now, the CPL sort of encapsulates that. It's not carnival season, but they'll make a carnival out of it. Again, I hate to throw cold water on it. You really want to see how the conditions will come up in a situation like that with semi-finals and finals. Ideally, you want to have good pitches that are conducive for good cricket, and not necessarily swaying the balance in one favor or the other.
And do we have to ensure that the Trinidad and Tobago hosts are in the semi-finals at least?
It helps. It certainly helps, because you will still have that home support. I'm sure people will be traveling between the islands to watch a lot of the cricket and be part of the celebrations. But one thing you'll say about Trinidad and Tobago, if their team is anywhere in the semi-finals or finals, they will come out and support, and it creates an atmosphere.
One interesting point that came out when we heard that Trinidad and Tobago had been given the semi-finals and finals was that the organizers were looking at Florida and also at Dubai for the hosting of the Caribbean Premier League, and that Trinidad and Tobago actually beat out 2 big names.
It shows you the commercial viability out there, and they're obviously going to market this tournament as best way they can. They've got to try and squeeze every possible ounce of revenue that you can generate from it. We don't know exactly what the longevity is like with the CPL. They're hoping that it will go on for years and years, and T20 cricket is here to stay. It's still a very good marketing tool for the game of cricket, even if the purists will think differently. But certainly in terms of generating revenue, it's going to be here to stay. So you've got to try and draw on whatever you can. I mean, I can sort of understand the Florida edition, but Dubai, you know,
it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It takes it a bit far, but just imagine what the dollar can stretch, how the dollar can stretch, and we know how the dollar can stretch in Dubai.
Well, certainly we do, and that's perhaps a good point to end on there. This segment of Massey United Insurance's Line and Line. When we come back, we're going to talk about the ICC Cricket World Cup, and we're going to talk about West Indies. Any chances of going beyond the first round when we come back.
Across the Caribbean, more people are placing their trust in Massey United Insurance for the protection of the things that are important to them, their homes, businesses, and their prized possessions. That's because Massey United Insurance offers excellent general insurance coverage to help you manage whatever life sends your way. Our cadre of well-reputed agencies and trained insurance professionals are always ready to provide you with sound advice and prompt service. Choose the security and sound strength that is Massey United Insurance.
And welcome back to Massey United Insurance's Line and Line, to our final segment. Hendy Wallace in the studio with us. Hendy, the ICC Cricket World Cup, the 2015 edition, would have begun by the time this program is actually aired on Saturday on Sportsmax. West Indies in the World Cup. We've heard some interesting comments both from the manager of the West Indies team, Sir Richie Richardson, and also chairman of selectors, Clive Lloyd. Had me a little baffled. Certainly some of the thoughts that I've heard, I don't know what your thoughts are, but certainly the West Indies in their first warm-up game certainly flattered to deceive. Perhaps in some people's minds, not too surprising at all.
Not if you look on what happened in South Africa, bearing in mind that we were totally outclassed in South Africa, and many people felt that that form or that sort of performance would have carried forward into the World Cup. And it seems to have done that in the warm-up games. And I'm not even sure that the key players for the West Indies, certainly in the batting, have not come to the fore just yet. And the bowling seems to be, it doesn't seem to be able to hold its own. And I think that that's a real concern for them as well. I guess they were hoping that with a lengthened batting lineup that they might be able to put some good scores on the tins or to chase down some scores. But it's really a combination. You need your bowling attack as well to be able to hold its own in the 50 over format. And I don't think that they've quite got it together. They'll certainly miss someone like a Narang in that bowling lineup to add some sort of stability in those middle overs. Suleiman Ben is in the squad. He's probably going to be given the responsibility to do it. But the pitches that they're likely to encounter, I don't think that Suleiman Ben will get an awful lot of assistance from those surfaces.
Well, certainly we expect, talking about surfaces, Australia and New Zealand, I think by most people's view, have been installed as the favourites because of the home conditions. Should be some bouncy pitches, etc., etc. But if we focus on the West Indies team, clearly it is critical for Chris Gayle to fly at the start of the innings, and if he doesn't, it seems to put the whole planning process for the team in trouble.
Well, it seems like the other teams planned for Chris Gayle, so that would suggest that he's still a very key component in the West Indies. Any sort of resistance from the West Indies, and his form has not been great. Certainly, he's been finding all sorts of ways of getting out, whether it be unfortunate ways or poor shot selection. So that's obviously a concern for the West Indies, and Dwayne Smith, his partner as well. It's been felt that that partnership was ideally suited to give them a flying start to capitalise on those fielding restrictions early on, the first 10 overs or so. But we haven't really seen it come together as yet, so that would be a concern for the West Indies. And I think Richie Richardson said something along the lines that they didn't want to peak too early. So maybe there's some hope that as the tournament progresses, we're only at the warm-up stage now, that maybe there's still an opportunity for that partnership to work. I don't like to look at individuals so much, but it's ideal to have partnerships, and because Dwayne Smith and Chris Gayle have similar batting styles, they can complement each other in the event that a player has an off day, and he will sort of go into his shell and try to give most of the strike to the other guy. So that's how partnerships work. You wouldn't expect them to go shot for shot at the start of the innings, because not very often you see that being effective. So that obviously is a concern. And then we spoke again about getting those runs in the middle overs, being able to maneuver the ball around. And one of the shortcomings for West Indies batsmen over a period of time have been the amount of dot balls that they've been able to accumulate in an innings, because we're boundary hitters. So we tend to have fairly useful players at the top of the order, fairly useful players at the end of the innings. But an area where we have struggled has been in the middle part of the innings, where we have not been able to maneuver the ball as much as you would like to rotate the strike in those middle overs.
And talking about partnerships now, if you look at the other aspect of partnership, bowling partnerships, I don't think at this stage, even though we are just days away from playing our opening game, that we have determined what is our best bowling options, or what are our best bowling options. We still seem to be doing quite a bit of experimenting.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is that the bowlers have not really hit the sort of form. There's no real guide. As I said, coming out of South Africa, they were absolutely pummeled in that South African series. So there's no form coming into the tournament, and they'll probably be looking very closely at these warm-up games. Luckily, it's structured in such a way that all 15 players can participate. Only 11 can field at a time, or 11 can bat, but it gives them an opportunity to get all the players on the part and certainly look at their bowling combinations. And I think you're right. I don't think they're settled in their mind what their best bowling combination is. I think the absence of Sunil Narang has really thrown everything into a tailspin.
Okay, well, if we move away from the West Indies team just for a moment and we tend to look at the tournament overall, we've heard Dave Richardson, the CEO of the ICC, talking about sledging and the ICC clamping down on it. And I certainly heard veteran commentator Red Ferreira suggest that perhaps Australia and England will be the ones that will find some difficulty because they thrive on the whole question of sledging and putting the other team under pressure.
It seems to be an accepted practice now in international cricket. And let's put it this, India not far behind. If we look at the...
And we can call a few names of that.
Yeah, so it seems to be an accepted practice. I think it's very energy sapping, but maybe I'm too much from the old school. I don't know if they find time to do all that, but it clearly works. You know, they
put the opposition under pressure.
You know, there's some players that it really gets under the skin. And at the end of the day, if you get the upper hand on the opposition before a ball is bowled, or before he strikes a ball, then you start with that advantage. So I suppose they will argue that it's worth the while, but now with all the technology, the effects that it can have on the crowd and stuff, I think that's what they're really concerned about. It's all well and good for you to say it will remain on the field of play, and when we go off the field, we'll have a beer.
All is well, right?
You know, but sometimes the spectators don't see it that way, and the ICC has a responsibility for the development of the game and the marketing of the game, sponsors as well. You have to take all the stakeholders into consideration. So I think they're right to maybe put notice there that they're prepared to do something about it. And I don't think it will stop the sledging, but it may just keep it to a manageable level.
And finally, Hendy, before we close off on tonight's Massey United Insurance Line and Length, Australia and New Zealand, obviously the favourite. Your thoughts?
I think South Africa must be considered as favourites as well. So you've got three of them there. I like to see New Zealand as the dark horses. But I don't know. I maybe have a soft spot for New Zealand in global tournaments because they play as a unit and they play so well. I think playing at home will certainly help getting to the playoff stage at the quarterfinals. I would expect them to be there. And once you get to that stage, Andrew, form then will take over.
Because you need to win 3 games in a row.
That's right. Form will take over, and then any number can play at that stage. But I wouldn't look too far beyond those 3 teams: Australia, South Africa, and New Zealand, in that order.
It's certainly in that order, and you heard it from Hendy Wallace on tonight's Massey United Insurance Line and Length. That's been our program. Join us next week for more when we discuss even more of the World Cup.